Now I'm going to talk about Satipaṭthāna. Buddha has talked about this Satipaṭthāna in many discourses. Satipaṭthāna bhavana, this Satipaṭthāna mindfulness meditation is the only way for the liberation from all sufferings. So this practice is very important, and therefore we should understand what is Satipaṭthāna. Satipaṭthāna bhavana, mindfulness meditation. So simply it is translated as mindfulness. But we should understand what kind of mindfulness should we have, should we cultivate or develop in order to be liberated. The Pali word Satipaṭthāna, it is the compound word Sati and Paṭthāna. Sati is the awareness. Sati is mindfulness, attentiveness, the presence of mind. The literal meaning of Sati is to remember. Sati is remember, to remember. This word Sati is derived from the Pali root Sara, and Sara has the meaning of remembering. So Sati is remembering. But in Satipaṭthāna practice, Sati is not just remembering. It is not just remembering. It is the awareness, the presence of mind, the heedfulness, the attentiveness. So to understand the Sati, mindfulness, we should know its characteristics, its functions. Sati, mindfulness, has the characteristics of non-floating. Means it does not float on the surface. It penetrates the objects. It plunges the objects, not floating on the surface. So that is Sati, mindfulness. Whatever the objects noted, the noting mind or the observing mind plunges into that object. It penetrates that object. And that is the Sati, mindfulness. So It is the full awareness, the thorough awareness of the object. The simile is given as stone. When we throw stone in the water, that stone will sink inside the water. But when we throw cork in the water, it will not sink. It moves up and down on the surface of the water. So here, Sati mindfulness is like a stone. When there is mindfulness, the noting mind penetrates the object. It sinks into the object. And that type of Sati mindfulness we need to develop in the practice. And Sati, when we have that type of non-floating mindfulness, that type of Sati developed, we will not have any confusion about that object. We will not forget. We will not lose the object when we have non-floating mindfulness developed. So not losing the objects or the absence of confusion is the function of mindfulness. The noting mind, the observing mind will not lose the sight of object. The noting mind will not forget the object. So the mindfulness will not allow the disappearance of the object of observation. And when the noting mind will not lose the sight of object, will not lose the view of that object, then the noting mind and the object of observation becomes face to face. So Sati, mindfulness, is manifested as Sayāgyi Satipaṭthāna. That means the observing mind and the object is now face to face. So the noting mind sees the object very clearly. It will not lose the sight of the object. It will see the object very clearly because the noting mind is face to face with that object. Then yogi sees the very true nature of that object. the yogi comes to see the different sensations, different other natures of the objects observed. So if yogi is noting the rising movement of the abdomen, when the noting mind plunges into that rising movement of the abdomen, a yogi comes to see the nature of rising movement. The rising movement, actually it is the air element. Air element is predominant in rising movement. Yogi will come to see the tension, stiffness, movement, heat or cold or expansion. When observing mind plunges the falling movement, yogi will see contraction or relaxation or pushing or pulling force. The yogi now able to see these natures because the noting mind and that rising or falling movement is face to face. And another manifestation of this sati mindfulness is protection. The noting mind or observing mind, when it is face to face with the object, it will not lose the sight of the object. It sinks into that object. The noting mind sinks into the object, so the yogi comes to see the very true nature of that object. Knowing is there. So at that time, there is no chance for any other unwholesome mental states to enter in the stream of consciousness. The mind is protected. The mind is guarded from those unwholesome mental states, unwholesome defilements. That is, therefore, the noting mind, the mindfulness, sati, is compared to a doorkeeper or a security guard. A security guard will not allow bad people to enter inside the building. It will stop at the main gate. The guard will only allow the good people. Same way, when mindfulness, sati, is present, unwholesome mental states or defilements will not have a chance to enter in the stream of consciousness. The mind is protected. The mind is guarded from those unwholesome mental states. And when we practice continuously and respectfully, we come to experience. We come to experience this. We will see how the mindfulness, Sati, is like that. So therefore, in the practice, we must work continuously. We must do our job of observing or noting every arising objects without missing, without forgetting. Because only when we develop a good, a strong mindfulness, we come to see the very true natures of the mind and matter. We will be able to develop insight knowledges stage by stage. Therefore, we should try our best to develop strong, high quality mindfulness. To develop this strong and high quality mindfulness, what can we do? How can we develop it? Noting continuously. In the text, the proximate cause to arise the mindfulness, the text on the proximate cause of this mindfulness to occur, that is mindfulness itself. Mindfulness itself is a cause for the high quality mindfulness. That means we have to aware, we have to observe every single objects. So every single observation, every single noting helps, supports to develop high quality mindfulness. Mindfulness itself is the cause of mindfulness. The first mindfulness helps the second one. The second mindfulness helps the third one. The third mindfulness helps the fourth one, and so on. So that is the nearest cause to develop high quality mindfulness. It is, the simile is given like a and the process of learning, the education, primary school education helps for the secondary school education, and that helps for the college or university education. Similarly, in the practice also, the mindfulness itself helps to develop the stronger mindfulness. And for that, we have to note again each and every single objects that occurs in our mind and body. That is the mindfulness. And there is another word in Patthāna. And the meaning of Patthāna is form, close establishment. So Patthāna is also the formed, closed, and strong, steadfast setting up awareness in the objects. There is a particle pa in Patthāna, and this pa has different meanings. So the pa has one meaning is pakhanditva. That means noting mind rushes towards the object. When we have good mindfulness, when mindfulness becomes good, strong, we experience in the practice, we experience that whenever the object arises, the noting mind seems rushing towards that object. It rushes towards that object with great force. We can experience this in the practice. If we practice very respectfully and meticulously, non-stop, continuously. Whatever objects arises, the noting mind just runs towards that object with force. Then the mind will not lose that object. The noting mind can grab, the noting mind can seize that object. So that is that type of mindfulness we should have. Whatever the object arises, the mind should just rushes to that object so that it will not lose that object. The mind plunges inside the object. The mind penetrates that object. It's like a noting mind is attacking the object. It is attacking the object without any hesitation, without any reflection, without any thinking. Whenever the object arises, if we are thinking about that object, oh, what is that object? How is it? So if we are thinking about that object, we will not see the nature of that object. There is no time for thinking about the objects. There is no time. If we are thinking or reflecting about the object, we lose our mindfulness. There will be a big gap between notings. And when there is a big gap, many defilements will have a chance to enter in a stream of consciousness. Therefore, whatever the object occurs, the noting mind should note it immediately without any thinking, without any analyzing, without any questioning. This is very important. Sometimes we forget. Sometimes we forget, and whenever the object arises, we are late in noting the objects. So there should not be delay in noting those objects. The noting mind should be very active, very fast, catching up those objects. When there is a good mindfulness, the noting mind can catch, noting mind can rush or run towards the object very quickly. And another meaning of this particle ha is okantitva pavattati. That means the noting mind firmly grasps the object of observation. So when the noting mind firmly grasps that object, the mind will not slip off of the object of observation. It can seize that object at the beginning of the practice. The noting mind can grasp the gross types of objects. When keep on practicing continuously, keep on observing the objects continuously, the noting mind become able to grasp even a very subtle objects, even a very small objects. At the beginning of the practice, because the mindfulness is not strong enough yet, the mind cannot catch up the small, subtle objects. It can only grasp the gross objects. But after developing the strong mindfulness, the observing mind now can even note or observe very small, very subtle objects clearly, distinctly. That is also the power of mindfulness, Sati. And when the Sati, mindfulness, is not just an ordinary mindfulness, when this mindfulness now becomes extraordinary mindfulness or outstanding mindfulness, the observing mind can cover the whole object, means the entire object. The noting mind can now observe the object completely, fully, not partially. Sometimes the yogi may experience that the noting mind spreads over the entire object. It covers everything. The noting mind covers everything, the whole object, entire object, not leaving any small part. The noting mind can now note every corner of that object very, very clearly. This is because of the extraordinary mindfulness, the outstanding mindfulness. So Satipaṭthāna is that. Satipaṭthāna, that extraordinary, outstanding mindfulness, firmly established on the object of observation. And that type of mindfulness we should develop in the practice. So to develop this type of mindfulness, we have to note every presently arising objects from moment to moment. We do not have a time to rest. We do not have a time to rest. Every moment, every second, we should try our best to be mindful. Whatever the object arises, whether good object or bad object, whether desirable object or undesirable object, and whatever the position, our bodily position is there, whether we are sitting, standing, walking, lying down, eating, whatever we are doing. So every moment, every second, we should try our best to be mindful of all those moments, all those objects occurring at that time. In Satipaṭthāna Sutta, to develop extraordinary, outstanding mindfulness, the Buddha has given us the 4 types of objects. The objects that we are observing in this practice can be divided into 4 types. The first one is kaya, body. The second one is vedana, sensation. The third one is chitta, mind or consciousness. And the fourth one is dhamma, or general objects. To develop mindfulness, to cultivate mindfulness, there are 4 types of objects: kaya, vedana, chitta, dhamma, or body, sensations, mind, and general objects. Because we have 4 types of objects to be observed, we can say that there are 4 types of Satipaṭthāna. Among the 4 objects, the first one is kaya. Kaya is simply, it is the body. It is translated as a body. So the whole body is kaya. The whole body is kaya. Therefore, we have to observe the whole body. But at the beginning of the practice, we cannot observe the whole body. So in that whole body, there are many other small kaya, small body. Here in this practice, we are observing, we are noting rising and falling movement of the abdomen as a main object. This is also kaya. The rising and falling movement of the abdomen is also kaya. We are sitting here, this sitting also kaya. We are walking, that is also kaya. In walking also, we are doing left, right, lifting, placing, lifting, moving, placing. They are also kaya. Sometimes we are stretching our hands and legs. Sometimes we are bending. That is also kaya. We are opening and closing our eyes. That is also kaya. We are blinking our eyes. That is also kaya. So there are many kayas. Many kayas occurring. And we have to observe all of them. But at the beginning, we cannot. We cannot observe everything. That is why Venerable Mahasi Sayadaw instructed us the most obvious one, the most easiest one, that is the rising and falling movement of the abdomen. We start our practice, we start our meditation, sitting meditation, noting this rising and falling movement of the abdomen. And we also have other sensations in the body, like a stiffness, heaviness, heat, cold, tightness, hardness and softness, and movements, vibrations. Whenever these types of sensations occurs in our body, we just observe it, we just note it. So that is noting the kaya, observing the kaya, observing the body. How many times should we observe? Observing for just one moment, two moments enough? Not enough. Buddha used the word anupassana, kaya anupassana. You may have heard this word, kaya anupassana, kaya anupassana. And anupassana, the meaning of this word is looking repeatedly, again and again, noting or observing again and again. Just one noting, two noting, not enough. As long as that bodily object is obvious, as long as that bodily object is there, we have to note it again and again, repeatedly. If that bodily object disappeared, no more, then we don't need to note it. Why we need to note repeatedly, again and again? We come to see that object more clearly if we note it repeatedly, because we develop the strong mindfulness, and we come to see, we come to know the nature of that object. So whatever kaya or bodily objects arises, we direct our mind to that bodily object, and we make a mental leveling again and again, continuously, not in stop and go manner. Continuously, we should observe that object. Then it will be Kayanupassana, Satipaṭthāna. Noting bodily objects repeatedly, again and again. Yeah. The second object is Vedana, sensations. And in the practice, at the beginning, we will experience, mostly we will experience unpleasant sensations. So whenever we have these unpleasant sensations occurring, that sensation also should be observed repeatedly, again and again. Unpleasant sensations like pain, aching, you note it as pain, 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 focusing on that object. Aching, 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 continuously noting those painful sensations or unpleasant sensations, we develop mindfulness. Then it is Vedananupassana, observing repeatedly the sensations. Not only the unpleasant sensations, whenever we have some pleasant feelings, we have to observe that pleasant feelings repeatedly. And another object is chitta, mind. Mostly we have a wandering mind, thinking mind. We try our best to stay with primary object, rising and falling movement of the abdomen. We note it 1 or 2 or 3 times, the mind starts to wander. The thinking arises. And whenever we have this thinking, wandering, fantasizing, imagining, that mind should be noted immediately. Thinking, imagining, fantasizing, repeatedly. That is Cittanupassana. And sometimes we become angry in the practice. We hear something. Sometimes we see something, although our eyes closed, but we see some sceneries, we see some visions, forms. Those objects also we have to note repeatedly. Seeing, hearing, angry, whatever. Sometimes we feel very lazy. We have to note that laziness also. Lazy, repeatedly. As long as the laziness is there. So we note it lazy. Sometimes we feel very tired. The body feels very tired. We note it as tired. So whatever those types of general objects occur, we observe it immediately. We observe it very closely. And that is Dhammanupassana. So here we have 4 objects, Kaya, Vedana, Chitta, and Dhamma. And from which object we should start our meditation. And which object we should give priority. Which one? Kaya, yeah? Because Kaya is easy to recognize. Kaya is easy to note. We think that, oh, my mind is wandering all the time. There are many thoughts coming and going all the time. The mind is more clear than this rising and falling. The wandering mind is more clear than rising and falling. Because it's occurring all the time. We may think that. So it's easy to note wandering mind. Do you think it's easy to note wandering mind? No, it's difficult. Yeah, it's difficult. The mind is subtle. The mind is subtle than matter. Although we think, oh, I can note the wandering mind, oh, wandering, or thinking. At the beginning, 2, 3 notings is okay. But later we drawn away. We're drawn in that thoughts. Our mind is drawn away. So it's not easy to note the mental objects at the beginning. When we have not developed enough mindfulness, enough concentration. It's not easy to note the mental objects. That is why we suggest yogis that whenever there is wandering mind or thoughts, just try to note it 4 or 5 times. Like wandering, 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 or thinking, 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 and then return back to the object, maybe the primary object or maybe the pain. So what we are noting before this wandering occurs, it just goes back to that object. That is why in the Mahasi Sayadaw also give us the very easiest object, rising and falling movement of the abdomen. The Buddha also in the Satipaṭthāna Sutta, when the Buddha talked about the Satipaṭthāna, he started with the Kayanupassana Satipaṭthāna, not Vedana, not Chitta. Yeah, the Buddha started with Kayanupassana. Kaye Kayanupassana Viharati. So in the practice, we start our meditation from the obvious one, the easiest one, the kaya. And among the different types of kaya, the 4 great elements are most easiest to recognize. Among the 4 great elements also, the air element. The air element is most obvious one, most easy to note. And therefore we are noting the rising and falling movement because air element is predominant. And this talk will be continued tomorrow. That's all for today.